to cover today. So we've been talking about how to fix our broken system and get some deal flow happening. There's a number of things we're going to talk about, five points that we're going to cover today. The first one is flexibility. So we've had challenges with PFs putting properties into the system, AM's not responding, and it just sits there for a while. Somebody gets sick, somebody goes on vacation, whatever it is, that's not a good scenario if a property doesn't get handled. Somebody puts some time and effort into it, and then it doesn't progress. We don't want that to happen. You know, any work that's done, whether it be a PF, an AM, or a DM, we want it to keep going to its natural end, right? And hopefully that natural end will be a paycheck, although it could be a dead end. It could be a dead lead. And we want to make sure that that progresses and it doesn't just stop because somebody all of a sudden becomes a roadblock to the successing of that lead. So what we talked about doing, what we're going to implement is basically adding more flexibility into the system, taking down the walls of market 1, market 2, market 3, and team A, team B, team C. So basically, if a PF puts a property into the system, anybody that's qualified, whether it be an AM or a DM, they can go ahead and do the next phase. So if let's say it's a property in Dallas, and there's no AM available in Dallas because of whatever reasons, it doesn't have to be an AM in Dallas. It can be anybody that's qualified to negotiate and close that deal. They can go ahead and pick it up. They can claim it as their own, and they'll get paid that portion to be the AM for that. Same thing on the DM side, the dispo side. It doesn't have to be a specific market. And you know, some markets might be better than others. Some markets we haven't necessarily explored. Some people might prefer Indianapolis or Memphis or some other location. We're taking down the walls. So if you have a good market, you have a good lead, get that flowing, get it into the system. Whoever does the PF side will get paid the PF work. Whoever does the AM side will get paid the AM work. Whoever does the DM side will get the DM paycheck. Make sense? Any questions on that? I'm sure there's got to be some questions on this adjustment.
Will that increase the number of markets, Ralph, or are we sticking with the same core number?
No, we can do different markets. We don't have to just do the 3 that we have been doing, being Central Florida, Atlanta, and Dallas. We can open up to other locations. There might be some challenges in particular to on market that we may have to say no to or figure out how to address, such as on market in North Carolina. They require they feel like they require a non-refundable due diligence, and that becomes an obstacle for wholesaling, because we can't just stick out a non-refundable due diligence and you know, throw that money away if the deal don't work out. So there are some cases that we'll have to say no to, but in general, the walls are open to go other places. You know, there are realtors in North Carolina that will accept a 0 due diligence fee, but they're few and far between. So that's just an on-market challenge in North Carolina. Every market is a little bit different. So we're not saying just the 3 markets we're in, but you know, if there's a particular market that becomes a challenge, such as North Carolina on market, then that would be a no-go. But overall, unless they accept a no due diligence fee contract. Off market North Carolina, not a problem. It's just the on market. And that's the market I know about that is problematic. There might be others that become problematic as well, that, you know, as we explore them, we'll address those challenges. But if, you know, a lot of people swear by a certain market and they want to work a certain market, and we're open to that. So, when it comes to dispo, the initial idea that we had going into this is that we have certain dispo people set aside for certain markets, and they develop a pool, a database. They're working those, the buyers, the cash buyers, and keeping a strong relationship with them, so that when the opportunity comes in the door, they've got that relationship, they can dispo it. But what we found is that's not necessarily as easy as it sounds, because if you form this relationship and then you don't provide them anything, then that relationship, you're kind of burning a bridge to a certain degree, because you haven't given them what you told them you would give them, meaning some good deals. So, so what we're finding is that if you have a deal in hand, it's a lot easier to go out and form those relationships and say, hey, I got this deal, does it fit? And then if it fits, great. If not, you go into the next guy. So with that sort of a setup for dispo, you're not locked into just like Josh with Atlanta, or Mike with Central Florida. You can expand out, and if somebody locks up a deal in Minneapolis, then any dispo can go and snatch it and find a buyer for it and make that deal happen.
It's sounds almost the complement to, it's easier to do agent outreach when you're inquiring about a specific listing first, rather than just cold calling them. Even if you don't deal with that particular property, that's a way into the rapport building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Without taking us too far off track, what is the difference between EMD and that due diligence deposit? That sounds like something unique to North Carolina.
Yeah. It's just their way of basically trying to lock people into actually making the deal happen and not being time wasters.
Okay.
So they feel if they got your
Similar to EMD.
non-refundable, you're gonna do everything you can to make it happen.
Is it a percentage based, or is it a flat fee, or?
It's it's open to whatever interpretation.
Negotiable. Okay.
Yeah.
But something, they want some skin in the game right up front. Okay.
Yeah.
Texas does it too. Texas.
Yeah. They have an option fee in Texas, which
Option fee. Yeah.
yeah, and that's extremely light. But in North Carolina, they're used to a much higher due diligence fee than the Texas option fee. So it's not a lot. It's just what they use on the on-market contracts, and that all the agents are trained on, and they train their sellers on. So it becomes a challenge on market, but for off market, you don't have to have that due diligence fee.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions on this point number one, tearing down the walls? All right, so point number two, lead options. We talked about this last week, that on market has been tough. We're in this scenario where, the prices are going down. Sellers are used to the price up here. Flippers know that as they flip the property, they're going to have to sell down here. So they want to, we have to lock it up lower than where the market is because of the timeline to flip and sell the thing. So they're always, it seems like, when you're in a down facing market, we're trying to train sellers to realize we have to get it cheaper, and they don't want to recognize that. And then as finally they start to realize, but they're always behind the game, right? So it's harder to negotiate. You can make it happen for sure, but it's harder. Once you reach the bottom and it flattens out, then it becomes easier because everyone gets used to where the market is at. But when you're in the process of going down, it's the hardest time to make that happen. So we talked about basically tearing down the walls as well on how you get your leads. In general, it's well accepted that the easiest way to get a deal, the best way to get a deal, is cold calling. However, it's also a way that a lot of people don't want to do. People are challenged to hop on the phone and do cold calling. And it can be emotionally straining for some people. So the advantage of on market is they've already raised their hand and said, I want to sell. So it makes it easier for newbies to come in and not feel that pressure and actually talk to somebody. But, there's other ways to do it. So for sale by owner, FSBO, they've raised their hand. We can, if you want to go after FSBO, that's an easy route because of the fact that they've already raised their hand and they want to sell. It might be the same idea that they're not understanding yet where the market's at. You still might have that same wall to face. But another problem with on market, with the elephant challenge, with so much attention from Pace's group and Jamil's group and Daniel's group and so many others, it's received so much traffic that it becomes hard when there's so much competition out there going after the same properties, that if we widen out and try to hit other areas, other possibilities, it takes that competition level down to make it easier to make deals happen. So if you want to go after FSBO, you want to go after expired listings. One of the advantages of those as well is it's easier if you're talking direct to seller, that you can actually negotiate. You can negotiate better because you don't have a middleman. You don't have the agent in the middle, but also the options of being able to set up a creative deal are easier because you don't have a middleman, because you can explain to them the value of a creative deal, what it means for them, what their value is. Anytime you got somebody in the middle and you can't talk direct to seller, there can be a translation issue and a challenge to actually build the rapport that you need to build with the seller to make it acceptable. So, we encourage people that want to go after off-market opportunities. I mentioned FSBO and expired. You can drive for dollars, which is a really good option too. If you see it in your neighborhood, in your area, a house that needs attention, and we can help you through that process. So that if you find a house and you say, hey, I want to know how to do drive for dollar, I want to know how to reach the person, we can walk you through the process of getting that address, finding the owner, getting their contact information, and calling them up. So drive for dollars works. Cold calling works. Those are like the core that has been around forever of wholesaling, and they still work good. So, if you want to pursue those, we recommend those as good opportunities. At this point in time, we're not going to pull lists and pull skip tracing, and we're not going to do VAs. We're still depending on PFs to be able to provide the leads. So the PFs are the lead finders. They're bringing leads to the table, and we want that opportunity to stay present, so that property finders can, if they want to do drive for dollar, or they want to do cold calling, or they want to do ring this voicemail or text, they're welcome to do any of those. We're not at this point going to actually institute that as part of our system. At some point in time, we very well might include some aid on lead generation, but when we do that, those are big expenses, and we're going to have to adjust somehow financially to make that possible. As it stands right now, the portions are all allocated. Those portions could change once we start spending to do this, the lead, the lists, the skip tracing, and maybe like SMS blasts, RVM blasts, or those sort of things cost money. And so it also takes up part of the workflow that a PF would typically do. But right now we're just going to open the gates and say, if you prefer one form of lead generation over another, like Jorge, I know you had pulled a list for utility shutoffs, right? So however you want to, if anybody wants to do their own list and work their own list that way, perfectly fine. But the idea is we can just tear down the walls on how you get your leads as well, instead of just everybody doing on market. Any questions there? All right, cool. So point number 3. One of the things I mentioned just briefly is if you find, like, driving for dollars and you find a house, how do you skip trace? And the best free way to skip trace is True People Search. So it's really easy. You can go to their website, truepeoplesearch.com, type in the information, and you can find the phone numbers. You might have to dial a bunch of them before you find one that works. So it's, but you can do that, and you can find how to get their information, of somebody that you've located that you don't have a number for. With FSBOs, with Craigslist, with expired, you can probably, well, expired, you may not have their phone number, but with FSBO and Craigslist, you should be able to get a hold of them through those systems. But expired listings, you can use True People Search. If you have an address, another method that you can do, instead of actually driving for dollars, you can do virtual driving for dollars, which is pretty cool. You basically hop on, whatever neighborhood you want to go look at. You get onto Google, you drop the little man thingy down on the street, and you can look at the houses down the street through Google and look for distressed houses. You can sit in your own house, and at a later training, I can show you how to do that. And you can find houses that are distressed, and then you do the driving for dollars, but you never actually have to drive down the street. Because a lot of these distressed houses, they're distressed for years. It's not like they just became distressed yesterday when you're looking at the physical house. They're boarded up, and those sort of houses, you can actually work them from your chair, from your office, find their information, call them up, and try to work a deal out. So there's a lot less competition with that than there is on market, and it might be a good opportunity. Okay, so the next point is the CRM. So we've run into some challenges trying to get the CRM to do what we wanted it to do. With the Kanban, where you have the multiple columns and the lead progresses from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4. We've been promised from ReiReply a better Kanban system with more columns. You can rename it, you can work it like you need to, but that's not happening. And we're spending a lot of money. It's in a very expensive CRM. It costs $500 a month. And it's just $500 down the drain every month for something they're supposed to be progressing, and it's not happening. So we're going to be switching to ReiReply. And with ReiReply, we can also have unlimited users. So we can get everybody that's active into the system, and we can set up the Kanbans, the columns, to represent the workflow of how we need it to be set up. So as we go from, a lead, somebody puts a lead into the system, we can put it into a column of unclaimed. And then somebody goes in and claims it, and it goes into a new claimed column. So that if somebody does AM work, acquisitions work, they can look at that Kanban and say, okay, here's my list of unclaimed, let me grab it. And that way, anybody that puts, like, a PF finds a lead and they stick it in the system, we can very easily detect which ones are somebody's grabbed and is working on, and which ones are sitting there, so that nothing just sits there without people realizing it or working on it. And once the walls are down and there's no, market, like, let's just say Atlanta, and Josh is out with COVID, and so it's sitting there. Well, Mike can jump in and take care of that, or Jorge can take care of that, or whoever. on the AM side, and then when it progresses to the DM side, same thing. There's no walls, so if it's in the unclaimed, anybody that's capable of doing DM work can go in there and grab it and dispo it. So the columns we can set up to be, as clear and concise as we need to, as far as what step of the workflow it's in, and keep it progressing. Any questions on the CRM? So this is something that we're going to be implementing before next week. So, the billing cycle for ReiReply ends in 1 week. We don't want to wait for the last second. So our good buddy Mike is going to be helping us there to swap it over. So whenever that schedule works out, and then, we're going to get that moved over, all the leads moved over to the new system, and then we can start up in the new ReiReply next week as soon as it's set up. So hopefully the beginning of next week, we'll have another weekly meeting and talk about these things. Any questions there? All right. Point number 5. I'm going to stick in the chat here a couple of YouTubes that will help explain the methodology that I'm going to be suggesting at this point. So anybody heard of Rick Ginn?
Yeah, he's pretty popular out there.
Yeah. So I'm not claiming this method. This is Rick's method, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's called Go for No. The Go for No method basically says, the challenge that he says that we're facing is that everyone's so used to this 90 or 70% rule that we're trying to set the bar at basically, you got your after repair value times 70% minus the rehab costs, and then we go a little bit below that. But we're down here at 70 trying to close it. They're at 90 and they want to meet in the middle, and that's not a possibility. We can't be in the 80s. It just doesn't make sense. But what he's saying is you take your ARV and subtract out the repair costs. So he suggests you actually subtract out the repair costs first, and then you multiply by 50%, not 70%, but 50%. And by doing that, you're going for the no. You want them to say no. The idea, well, you want them to say yes, of course, but that you're not expecting them to say yes at 50%, because at 50%, it's a low ball offer. So the idea is to get them to give you a counter offer. And that, because you're reframing this, their mind is framed for 90%. They want 90% out of this thing. Our mind is framed for 70%, but we can't meet in the middle. So what we do is we reframe it at 50% so that we can meet in the middle, so to speak. And he says he normally locks them up at 75, 76%, and that works. So, and these are recent videos that he's doing them currently at 75 or 76%. That's after you subtract out the costs of rehab. He does say it's a little bit more work on the dispo side, but here's the thing. Right now, our dispo side has no workflow because we put all the weight on the acquisition side, and then it's not balanced. You need to make the acquisition side work a little bit. The negotiation phase is work, right? They got to work the deal to make it happen. And then this side got to work the deal to make it happen. So this is like a balancing approach where you're finding a number that will work. The step number one is, step one is always rapport. You've got to build rapport. And if you don't build rapport with the sellers or with the agents, this 50% thing won't work, because they'll just view it as another lowball offer and you won't hear from them again. But if you can build that rapport first and get them to like you to a certain degree. And then you present your offer and tell them, look, this might sound a little low, but because of A, B, C, and D, we'd like to offer 50%. And then wait for their response. And, you know, if you're working with an agent, you know, ask the agent, what do you think they'll say with that? And like, well, I don't think they'll accept it. Can you do me a favor? Can you present that offer and let me hear what they have to say? And so after the agent comes back and said, yeah, they didn't accept that offer, say, can you please ask for a counter offer? So the key here is to get the counter offer. So the no is not there because it's a dead end. The no is there to get the counter offer so that we'll know where they're actually at. Because with on market, you know, you don't necessarily know where their bottom line is. What you know is where it's listed at, but that doesn't mean that's their bottom line. So they're going to try to negotiate as much as they can, right? But when we set the bar at 50% and then we ask for the counter, when they counter back, that gives us more of a feel of where their bottom line is, so that we can see if that counter is anywhere close to where we need to be. And then we can negotiate from there. But the idea here is, number one, build solid rapport so that they will be willing to make a counteroffer. And then number two, presenting the 50% offer, which 50%, again, real simple. You just take your, you know, the ARV minus the repair costs, and then times 50%, and then minus the wholesale fee. That's the 50% offer. And then when they say no to that, which they presumably will say no to that, then you ask for the counter. So you have to ask for the counter. You know, even with our current way of doing it, you still got to ask for the counter. If they say no, that you always got to ask for the counter. But with this system, go for no system, you definitely have to ask for the counter, because we're going for the no, we're expecting the no, and the counter is the next step that we're working towards. And then from there, once we get the counter, that kind of gives us an idea of where they're at, so that we can, you know, see where we can negotiate. If their counter, like, let's say that it's listed for 300 and it needs 60 in repairs, so we're at 240, and then we go to the 50%, which is 120, and we take another 10 off of it, we're at 110. So we present at 110 and they say no, and we ask for the counter. Remember, they're listed at 300. So they counter back at 290. Well, that's kind of a no deal, because 290 is just too far off from reality. You know, if they listed at 300 and you need to take 60 in repairs, and they don't recognize that, and they're only willing to drop 10,000, they're not even close. So we don't necessarily want to waste time on sellers that are not motivated, but this will help us to see where they're at. Getting the counter offer is a necessary element to seeing where they're at and their actual motivation to drop their price. So if we do 50 and then they come back at 78, well, then we're in the ballpark. If they come back at 90%, we're not in the ballpark. So we can negotiate down, you know, but if they're not willing to negotiate down into the low 80s on their counter, then it's probably not going to be a deal. Any questions on that?
Well, this follows the diet model. When you're looking at that 50% mark, we're saying 50%, but some markets are actually more in lines with the, 40, 45, 50, 55, but it kind of jumps over like what's the specific for the market and just says, let's focus on this property. Let's, like you said, go for the no and work it up from that level so that there's some more room to negotiate. Instead of fighting over pennies, we're moving, dollars and chunks instead.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And it's still, there's still variations in market. So if you're doing San Francisco, it's not going to be the same as Memphis. So, you know, you'll tweak those numbers according to your market, but that's the idea is, you know, just do a low ball offer, you know, for a PF that's doing this initial offer, you do not need to have exact numbers. This is not rocket science to put in this initial low ball offer. It's simply to get the no, reframe it at 50-ish% so that we can get the counter. And then from there, you know, you can just, you know, let the AMs take it and negotiate it. So very similar to how we started out. If as a PF, you still don't feel comfortable putting in that low ball offer, you know, an AM can give you assistance. I can give you assistance. Alex can give you assistance. But the idea is you don't have to have a well-calculated, this is as tight as we can make it initial offer. It's a low ball offer to go for the no, to go to the next step, which is the counter offer. Any questions?
So it's almost like you're anchoring at that lower price. I get it.
100%. Yes. Yeah, because they're anchored at 90%. We need to re-anchor them.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And once they're re-anchored, you know, when you build the rapport on that initial stage of talking to the agent or talking to the seller, you can explain things like, you know, you can tell them up front, you know, the price right now is just really not doable because the market has moved, and, or, you know, because this place has water damage and there's a lot of hidden things that we don't see yet that represents a risk. And, you know, we're going to have to put in a much lower offer. And when you kind of explain out these sort of details, you're already framing them for your low ball offer. And then once you frame them for the low ball offer as part of your, you know, rapport, you build the rapport initially, you explain, you frame them for the low ball offer, and then you anchor them with that low ball offer so that you move, you know, from their anchor down to your anchor so that you can find something that works. But yeah, you have to re-anchor to a position that's, you know, far away from their 90% anchor.
Ralph, could I ask briefly
Yeah.
about our buy box? Is it single family only, 1 to 4? Can we do 6 to 20? I know we're not getting into the large multifamily space necessarily, but what's the present buy box?
Well, you know, 3.2s have always been the bread and butter almost anywhere you go. Every market is a little bit different though. You kind of have to know that market to a certain degree, which was an advantage when we had specific markets, you know, like Josh knows Atlanta, Mike knows Florida, but, you know, depending on that market, there can be some variations. And even within a market, you're going to have different neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods are going to be more high end and others low end. So if you look in a particular neighborhood at the sold properties, the flipped properties, you can see what the flippers are doing. So if the flippers are doing 900 square foot 2-1s, then that is a good property to go after. If the flippers are doing 3,000 square foot 5-3s, then that's a good property to go after. But, you know, if no flippers are doing it, then it's going to be more challenging to dispo. So if you have in mind, you know, we're a marketing arm in particular for fix and flippers, then you're looking for what they're doing in that neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. If we come across what we think might be a unicorn deal and it's a larger multi, not super large, but you know, something in the small to medium range, or even a, you know, 2 to 4 family, should we still bring it to you and Alex and Mike just to get it vetted to see if it, even though it's a little outside the box?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Some deals may not fit into our little system here, but if it's a good deal, you know, we'll all work together and figure out how to make it happen.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know how sometimes you call up or you're talking to somebody about one thing and he says, no, I'm going to hang on to that. But I do know of, or I do
Yeah.
happen to have, and then all of a sudden it's a completely different conversation, but okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah. Absolutely. No
Because I know
problem,
we have the
Ray.
resources within the group to do something like that. I know Rob's group is doing it en masse. They're doing like, it's a big picture, multi-person approach. But if
Yeah.
it's a lead we create within this group, it would be a shame to take it outside of the group, knowing,
Right.
that we have some incredible people and resources.
Yeah, 100%. So, Alex and I have both been building up our side on the multifamily to get ready and be able to handle that. I've been doing multifamily for the last couple of Deal or No Deals. Mike is very experienced across the board when it comes to different types of deals. So we can most definitely attack a deal. And even if it's beyond where we're at currently, like let's say it's a 500 unit class A syndication type multifamily, well, perhaps we can just wholesale it and, find a buyer for it. And that's a nice big paycheck if we can do that.
If you get Pace or Uncle G on speed dial, no problem. Right?
That's right. Yeah, for sure. All right, let me double check here. Yeah, so that's basically what we had planned for today. And we're going to be implementing the adjustments to the CRM very shortly. But as far as tearing down the walls, go ahead and go for it. I know that there's certain limitations within ReiReply as far as people set up for certain roles. And we're also going to be looking at the Discord and seeing what we need to do there. This is all something that, Alex and I were talking to Mike about earlier today, and we came to this decision. So we don't have all of the details as far as how we're going to tweak Discord or how we're going to deal. We're not going to put a bunch of changes into ReiReply at this point because we're dumping it very shortly. But as far as those other walls, anything that you can, go ahead and attack without the issues of, okay, this isn't my market or this isn't my role, feel free to just move forward because we want to make sure that the deals aren't held up from this point forward. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Right on. Any other questions?
I have a question. So let's say someone approaches me for Texas or Florida, whatever we're doing. Am I supposed to see it all the way through or hand it over to their manager? I can just get them started and hand it over. How do you want to do that?
Well, so Mike was given an illustration earlier today about, was it spears when you're hunting? So, if you're tossing the spear and you help take that elk down, whatever animal it is, you get paid for your portion of the workflow. So right now, the way it's divided up is we have a PF, an AM, and a DM as the primary people that are taking the deer down, right? The elk down. So if you're handling the AM work, you get paid for the AM portion of it. If you dispo it, you get paid for the dispo portion of it. People are qualified for different things, right? And if you're qualified or you have the connection to a buyer and you want to do the dispo, we don't want to limit people to what they're qualified to do. If they're not qualified, then, turn it over to somebody that is qualified. Make sense?
Right, so the recap of that, to reiterate it, just to be sure everyone understands. If you need help, like there's certain things that we expect the property finder to do, a little bit of underwriting with the acquisitions manager, getting it under contract, just by doing that. So if you find a property and you get it under contract, you're getting paid for both positions. If you have to hand it off to somebody to do dispo, then dispo is getting paid for dispo. If you say, hey, dispo, I have a possible buyer, but I don't know them well enough, and you hand them a buyer, you're going to get some credit towards your dispo because you threw one more spear and just made it easier for dispo to actually get it sold. You might be the property finder and have a potential buyer, but you're having trouble getting under contract. So the spear analogy, it may not be the perfect analogy, but like, you don't kill an elk or a bear or a lion with one spear, right? Everyone's got to keep chucking spears to try to take this darn thing down. So if the property finder only finds the property and does zero other effort, and the acquisitions person or somebody else comes in and is doing the comps and talking to the agent or talking to the seller and taking it further, that second person, even if they don't do the acquisitions and they don't do the dispo, they did so much extra effort on the property finding grouping, the area, that if, let's pretend there's 5 steps to the whole property finding process. If one spear is finding the property in general and 4 more spears is all the other activity that needs to be done before getting it under contract with an acquisitions manager, you're going to get a payout equivalent to the effort that you put in. So as much as you put in, even if you need help in some areas with somebody else, you're only sharing that portion. You're not sharing everything. You're just sharing the portion that you get help in. So if you can take it all the way through, great. If you can only take it halfway through, but you can help later on too, like you can get, Pace always said like chomps, bites. Take your portions of what you can do. And while you're working with other people, you're learning more about the process. You're getting better at what you're doing because you're going to partner up with somebody who helps you move it ahead. So it's the same concept we've always had, but it's with less restriction and more flexibility so that you're not locked into a specific lane, and you can change lanes as needed. You can change speeds. You can shift gears. I'm terrible at analogies, honestly. So you get what I'm saying, I think, right? Okay.
No, I thought it was a good analogy. But yeah, it's once we start breaking apart the percentages, it can be a little bit of a challenge to figure out how to break out who gets what. Just if 2 people share in the AM work, it's kind of easy to say, okay, we'll split it between you 2. It gets more challenging if it's like, okay, I did this much and you did that much, and how are we going to split it? But we want to make sure to pay people for the work that they accomplish. That's the basic idea behind it, and that we keep moving it forward and keep moving everybody forward. Part of the whole idea of Fat Juicy Deals to begin with is to help people progress, right? That they start with a PF and then they move on to become an AM and then on to become a DM. And if there's somebody there that's helping you through the process and you share that cut, then that's a way of progressing, right? It's kind of like a way of, it's like, okay, look, maybe for example, somebody's brand new, but they want to be able to take on the negotiating side. So they talk to an AM and say, hey, can you listen to my negotiating and help me out, and I'll split the fee with you. And then they're able to progress that to the next, they're able to get themselves to the next level of becoming an AM because they, an AM actually helped them through the process and they split that fee with them. But the idea behind it is that people get paid for the work they accomplish, even if they're helping somebody else out because they needed help. Any other questions? I do have an appointment at 3, so we've got a few minutes if somebody has something they need to, they want to ask or bring up. All right, cool. Then we'll go ahead and have this meeting again every week, same time, same place, and we'll be working on transferring over to the new CRM, and hopefully with this new adjustment and putting into practice the go for no methodology and opening up to new types of leads, we can make some deals happen. And feel free to let us know if you get stuck. let any of the, in particular, you know, the DMs we have here online with us, Mike and Josh, very, very helpful and experienced people. AMs too, you know, if you're a property finder and you need help, there's a lot of support here. So, you know, Alex and I want to be your support as well. We don't want to interrupt or get in the middle of workflow of somebody that's tackling it. But we do want to support you in whatever you need to keep you moving forward. All right. So thank you all and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ralph.
You
Take
bet.
care.
You too.